Hello, this is Will Faerber from Art to Ride, and today we are going to have a little update on Bailador. Those of you who remember Bailador, remember he came to us a few years back. He was with us for about 2 years. He had some very, very bad back problems, which was the source of most of his problems. And we had him for about 2 years and got him going quite well. He went home for about a year and it stayed pretty good. And he's come back now for a little re-education and a little try to move him forward as education as we go on from here. So you can see that I've put him in a shambone, which is an interesting point with this horse because I had him in side range before. I had tried the shambone with him early on in the training, but he was so overreactive at that time. Those of you who may remember, this horse was, I mean, if you touched him with your left leg, he'd rear up, and he just was having a lot of back problems. That took a long time. He had kind of indentions where a bad fitting saddle had basically taken away the muscle all the way down to the bone on his back, like an imprint of a saddle on his back. So it took quite some time. He was really almost sway back. And as you see there going by in silhouette, he still has a little bit of a drop there. Now, the interesting thing I want you to see as we work him today, I'm going to zoom in on that so you can see when I start to work in the trot, he actually starts to lift it up a little better. But now that he's come such a long way, I've been able to get him to relax into the shambone. And this is a horse that he had learned to spook, and the spooking had become a self-perpetuating thing, and that every time he spooked, he threw his head up, cracked his back down, which of course made him sore in the back, and that made him spook even more. So he was just kind of at a state where he was in a mental frazzle, where you got on him and he just, was just trying to jump out of his skin the whole time you're on him all the time. And so as you can see now, even lunging this horse, when I first began him, it literally took a year to get him to go around a circle and just keep his head down without spooking somewhere on the circle on a lunge line. So shows you how far we've come. But in the last few weeks, he's really gotten to a much better place. We went through a little period when he came back to us, and I tried to do a little canter work. Canter work's always been the problem, which is what I'm getting to here with this horse. And as soon as I start to canter him, he gets sore in the back, and we had our wonderful Dr. Kim work on him here, and she was able to help me get him back feeling good in his back again. So now I've just gone back to the trot work, and I've gone to the shambone because there's always a problem with the canter, was just like the spooking. Every time this horse would canter, he throws his neck back into his body or curls his neck over and drops his back. So every time you canter the horse, he'd be sore for 2 weeks later. So this shambone is enabling me to able to short circuit that. So if you see how long his neck is out here in the shambone, he's much longer and stretched deeper, and the stride is much deeper and regular now than it's ever been before. We've never seen this kind of just beautiful floating trot out of him. In fact, when he came down here, I was back to us, I was being told that he might need hock injections, and there was nothing wrong with this horse. His hocks, his back had just gotten sore again. When his back is sore, he doesn't flex his hock. So once again, fix the back and you fix the hock problem. And that's really something that's true with most horses. Now I want you to see how here in the canter with the shambone, he's keeping the neck stretched out and long. And this is what I'm finally, and this is really the best he's ever done. It was today. And I feel like I'm finally over the hump with this and have found a way to get this canter improved. Because if you can canter like that, once again, without shortening himself back and bracing against his front legs, that's what would make his back sore. So by using the shambone, it just short circuits that thing, because once he got into the stretch in the shambone, all it does is if he starts to throw his head, it just prevents him from doing that. And then when he relaxes down, it does absolutely nothing at all. So once again, the horse teaches itself, hey, if I just stretch out here, everything will stay fine. And by virtue of doing this, it's really short-circuited that whole issue with him of throwing his head. And once again, look at the canter here and see how he keeps the neck out, rolling forward, instead of shortening up and starting to brace against his front legs, which has always been the way he's cantered, especially on the left lead. So the shambone's enabling me to get the neck out, and I feel like now I'll be able to create a canter, ultimately, and he'll be strong enough. Now, I will stay away from the canter a little bit longer. As you'll see in the trot work today, he has a wonderful, relaxed way of going today, really the best he'd ever gone. So again, just standing there looking, look how nice and long the neck is, how the top part of the neck is lit up. This horse used to be very ewe-necked. All his muscle was on the underside of his neck now, and he was broken at the third vertebrae as well. So we always have to remember with any of these horses that are broken at the third or fourth vertebrae, it always takes at least a year of stretching before you can bring them up, at least a year, in order for those tendons and ligaments to heal there. And in other words, they have to draw the bones back together, because what happens in the neck when people draw rein horses, they're able to use so much force against the neck that it separates the vertebrae in the neck, which can ultimately cause to all kinds of contusions between the spine and all this sort of thing. So I know it's not something that we want. So getting back the trot in this direction, same thing. Look how beautiful and out and floating. And while this doesn't seem like much, as you folks see me do this, often with horses, but this is a horse that literally, it took a year of patience just to get him to go around a circle without freaking out, without throw. He'd get in one spot, he'd pick out one point on a circle, and just every time he came around it, he'd throw his head. So he was a horse that people had fought with, and you can't fight with a horse like this, because this is the horse that is going to kill you and him before he's going to give in to fighting. Because as soon as you start fighting with him, then he goes back to, the tapes go off, and he hollows his back and ridges that, and then that gives him a sharp pain in the back, and then he wants to kill you. So once again, this is the only way to get there with a horse like this. Now I'm zeroing in here so you can see how once he gets that really good trot in the stretch, look how the loin lifts up. So it's not nearly as dropped as it was in the walk work, or even when we stand still with this horse, he still looks like that. And once again, look at the canter here. He's able to keep the neck out and long. Now, this direction canter has always been much better than the other way. The left has always been the problem with this horse. Trying to go to the left, if you even put your leg on him when he started him, he would go straight up in the air. So he's come a long, long way since those days. But I was so pleased. I really feel like now that's the kind of canter we have. See how slow and deep that is with the neck out long. When we can get enough muscle on that he can carry a rider doing that, which I still don't think he's ready to do yet, and I'm going to give him some more time before I do that. But it won't be long now. I kind of feel like with this horse, for the very first time, I've gotten him on this particular day, and it's just by sheer luck that it happened to be the same day that I was going to film him. But because I never know when this, but it is like that when we train horses. Like all of a sudden, it all clicks in. Like you see this one clicking in right now. So you see how slow and deep that stride is, how completely long he is through the neck, and once again, how completely relaxed. Because this horse was literally a horse who was, you would say crazy. He'd been driven crazy, and just didn't trust anybody. But yet, at the other hand, in the cross ties, he'd be the sweetest horse in the world. So somebody tried to ride him. So the nature of this horse is a very sweet horse, which I recognize right away. So, if you have a horse like that, and it just seems to be a loving, really sweet animal in the cross ties, and you get on it, and it's pinning its ears back and trying to bite you, well, there's something seriously wrong with that. Once again, look at this beautiful canter here as it swings out and keeps the neck out. And look how beautifully he was able to drop right back into that swinging, even trot. Now, look how even those trots are. Now, this also was a horse that when we first started him, if he just stood, he could not stand still without shaking his left leg. So when he stood in the cross ties, his left leg would just shake. That's all from weakness and the pain. Ultimately, it was all emanating from the same place in his lower back. And once again, that's why this work is so important. We see so many horses today that are on the verge of kissing spine. It's just ridiculous. The people are trying to show it, even Grand Prix level, and you just go and they're keeping these horses together with injections because they've become very good at that. But the problem is you can only keep them together so long with injections before nothing works any longer, and that's why we have so many ruined horses today that are just shot. I think somebody is much better off. The old English, sort of proverb was always, at the first sign of a leg, just stop and let the horse rest. So, and that should be everyone's thing. You should never even consider taking a horse that's been unsound and needling it and then going back to riding it, because all that's going to happen is it's going to get worse. So once again, coming back to the walk there, you see what I'm talking about behind that saddle there. That's the part we're always working on. That still needs to come up more than it is. But this is much, much better than it was. And once again, he is swinging freely over his back. How do I know? Because I can see that the horse is relaxed, and that's the biggest thing. So now we're going to do a workout under saddle with this horse. So same day, I've just lunged him, and this is exactly what his work should be. I was very pleased with that. This is probably the first day ever on this horse that I've ever had. Now you'll notice I don't have the shambone on him. He's back in a snaffle. I rode this horse for a long time in a double bridle because he was so reactive. You just never know. And you'll see him do one little sort of half-hearted spook here today. But it's, I'm in a snaffle. He just gives it up instantly. It's kind of like his brain, and it comes out of nowhere. And that's how he was. You never knew when it was coming, only it would be huge. You'll see one day, one little instant here today, he kind of looks at something, takes a side step, and just goes, forget about it. So this, as you hear me talking about many times, when we talk about riding horses, you should be able to get on the horse and stretch it like this. A horse that's ready to be ridden, that is, has done enough groundwork to be strong enough to carry you, and is sufficient contact in the bridle that you actually have some control if something goes wrong, this is where you'd like them to be. So you can see it just took a while for us to get back to that place with this horse. But this is one of the first days that I've ever felt I could just have a casual hack on this horse around the ring. And there was a sense, I've had him very relaxed before, but never as nicely as he was today. And I think for that very reason is I actually, this was the day this horse totally connected. Once again, it just, by sheer chance, I would be talking about something very different right at the moment if that's not what had happened today. But today it all just really came together for him, and that's what we look for. And of course, that's what we reward. But you can see how he's just walking around, stretching out, keeping a nice big active walk. All you see me widening my hand, sometimes same thing. Now, once again, this is this was a very spooky horse, so I don't take any chances. So you'll see me widen my hand so that I always have contact there in case he does do something. In other words, because as I've tried to explain with horses like this, a horse that has as many ingrained bad habits as this one, once you start to get over them, your goal is to never let it happen again. And that can be very, very difficult. So with a horse like this, he was so fast and so powerful. Now remember, this is a very big horse. And once again, how horses end up with these kind of problems, we very often see the biggest ones with these kind of problems, because this is a hugely athletic horse with a huge stride. With literally Grand Prix potential for jumping or dressage if you wanted to do it. If he were sound and didn't have these back problems, and he will one day. But what happens with these kind of horses that are so athletic is that, if you are not a very athletic rider, you will slow a horse down like this. So it's like a wave. Once again, I say to people all the time, when you think about the horse you're going to ride, you have to think about, can you ride that size of a wave, and can you ride it if something goes wrong? That's being the issue. These horses that are big waves also can have big bucks, and you must be able. There's not a horse in the world that is never going to spook at something, that's never going to jump up in the air and do a little spook or something like that. There's just, I've never experienced one yet that was alive that there wasn't something that could get them a little excited. But once again, how we have to react to that is by staying very cool all the time. Nice leg yield here. You can see how he's moving off my left leg. And as I said, this horse used to be impossible to move off the left leg. And as his owner mentioned too, he's almost better now. You can see he does one little sidestep there. He just decided to look at something. But once again, you see how it was nothing but a sidestep. Now, a year ago, or even when he came back to me 3 months ago here, that would have been to the other side of the arena. So he's giving it up so much better now and just kind of going, maybe that isn't worth it. And that's what I want him to know. But once again, with this horse, his problem, it was a self-perpetuating problem, because every time he would spook, he would throw his head all the way straight up in the air and hollow his back, and of course cause his back to hurt. So it was like this, he was caught in this self-perpetuating vicious cycle that just, of hurting himself, and therefore thinking that everything we're doing with him is hurting him. Which is why also when you see this horse in the cross ties, he's the sweetest horse in the world. Once again, once we get him over the pain, he'll be just as sweet to ride. So here I'm able to bring him up into a nice working walk, and I really feel like for the first time ever that I've been able to come up a little higher, and he's been able to maintain that and has enough strength where he's really come over his back enough that he's not pulling and lugging down on me. He's quite light and in self-carriage, and that's what I'm looking for. So I let him just stretch on down in that leg yield. So I held that little working walk for a few strides, and now let it right back out again. So I'm testing the waters here, which is what I want to do. I don't want to ask him for too much. My goal, of 2 years was to just get this horse to walk calmly around the ring. So once again, if you keep doing the right things, eventually you will get there. But as I said, this is the kind of horse that many trainers had tried to fight with and tried to fight into a frame. This kind of horse, you'll never win that battle. Once again, this kind of horse just becomes more and more dangerous. Once again, that's why so many thoroughbreds, sort of disappeared off the scene, because, trainers who are used to riding, these sort of dull warm bloods and can get away with whipping them and all the things that they do. You do that to a thoroughbred and it literally will kill you. I mean, I've seen them, I've seen them do it to people. So, once again, you can't train, but you can't really get good training any horse working it like that, where all your goal is just to make them submit to you, this kind of idea. And once again, especially when you don't have no clue of what you're asking in the sense of, is the horse physically capable? And of course, that's what leads to all of these difficulties with horses. If people just ask what the horses are capable of doing, like you see me doing with this one, he doesn't put up a big fuss about it, because this is what he actually can do, and he can't do much more than this. But once again, this is what I want him to do and what he needs to do. He has a nice swinging walk. You can watch even there, and I put my legs on, you can almost see the wave coming through the body of the horse as we talk about that wave. And that's the beauty of this kind of riding. Once you have ridden horses with their backs up, you would never go back to riding hollow horses, because once again, it makes it effortless to be able to ride, in the sense the horse carries you instead of you having, for instance, to post out of your stirrups, with each stride, because the horse has no back. Really good swinging walk here. And you see how I just follow him. I just don't let him escape. I let my reins get a little long. That's okay. Because I want him all the way down there. So once again, this is schooling riding. So all of you people who are tempted to send me messages, oh, well, your hands aren't up together where they're supposed to be. You can't do that till the horse goes well. My point being, we school horses sometimes a little different. Our goal is to get, when the horse is trained, then you will be able to equitate on the horse. We can hold your hands in that perfect little position and the horse will stay there. But until that time, sometimes we have to do many different things. Sometimes we have to raise our hands, sometimes widen them to keep the contact, sometimes lower them. And you can see he gets a little resisted, that old left side thing here, so I have to do a little indirect rein with him there just to get him off my leg so he doesn't overreact to that. But you'll see as soon as I get him to move quietly off the leg, watch how I bring him right back into that stretch. So for a moment there, I had to have him more bent in the neck to get him, to keep him from avoiding the left leg, as I felt him all of a sudden. And that's the way it happens with this horse. It isn't like a light switch goes off where the horse is never going to do anything wrong again from the minute you switch the switch. It just doesn't work like that. But a horse like this, every day, if we are consistent in what we do, each time we do what we do, the horse will get better and better. In other words, we're building good convolutions in the brain and overriding all those old tapes in the brain. And unfortunately, this horse had lots and lots of old tapes about what he should do with people on his back, which was mostly fight them and try to get them off. But you can't blame him if you had seen the condition this horse's back was in. And, no fault of the owner. She had sent him to, people who were supposed to be reputable horse trainers to work on the horse. But like a lot of trainers today, you see he does a little spook there, and like that, so it just comes right back down. As I said, once again, that would have been a much bigger thing. He just kind of gets over it now. It didn't turn into 10 minutes of him doing it over and over and over again. But as I was saying there, you just, it's never going to, it's not like a switch where you can just switch the switch and he's never going to do this again. It just doesn't work that way. It's not like putting in a new part in your car, and just like with people, as we all know, people who have mental problems can, spend a lifetime trying to overcome them. I mean, as simple as, even simple things, So I'm happy here. So I just brought him back to that same place just right away, just to remind him that he just had to relax there again. But notice I didn't do any punishing of this horse at all. When he did that, all I did was put the aids on and just bring him back to a walk. I didn't start beating him up on trying to get him off my leg. Once again, this is a horse, if you did that to, it just doesn't work. He would just explode and you would have undone everything that you've done with him. So that was a nice transition into the trot, and we see how beautifully he's able to go right down into a stretch here. You can tell how hot it is today. The back of my shirt there. This, I feel, was the best trot I've ever gotten out of this horse because it's deep and it's slow. So remember, that's always what we're looking. Look how round the hocks are moving there, just like they were on the lunge line. They look even. And there's a nice deep step in a round circle. You can almost see the ball rolling over the ground. And this is a very big ball. Once again, this horse is at least 18 hands. So he's easily the size of Legolas. Remember, I'm a very tall man. So once again, very nice. Just this seems like a little thing, but just to be able to bring this horse straight down alongside without him finding something to look at in the process, is a big step with him, the relaxation. And once again, I feel like this is really one of the first times I've ever gotten his neck out all the way where I really wanted it to be. I feel like this is the best trot that we've ever produced on the horse right here today. Because once again, look how he just slowly, and he's able to bend through the corners. And once again, remember we talk about bending. I never try to bend horses. I try to get them over their backs, and then they just bend. There's no effort at all to bend horses when you get them over their backs. So that's where people have so much wrong in riding if they don't understand this, because they get all hung up on trying to bend. That's once again why there's nothing better for horses than correct dressage, but nothing worse than bad dressage. Because imagine if you're trying to do all this with the horse hollow, the amount of stress it puts on his legs. And with a long-backed horse like this, what ended up happening with him is just his back collapsed, which is what happens to so many of them. Look around yourselves today when you're at the riding schools and when you go to horse shows, and just look at their backs. What do they look like? Take a look at our videos on what correct developed horses look like, and then go to these horse shows and see how many sway-backed horses there are when they take the saddles off at dressage shows. That should not be the case. And once again, hopefully we're gonna see an improvement in that in years to come. But really nice with him. Look how nicely he came across the diagonal. Nothing overreacting. Now here I'm going to let him back out. You see the neck starts to overbend a little bit. And of course he does that a little bit more on the left side than he does on the right side. So I want to get him right back out there again. So I don't want to have that break in the neck. It's taken a long and very hard work to keep him from flexing on that third and fourth vertebrae. It is finally healing up. And look how beautifully the horse goes by virtue of it. Once again, he's another good case. We have a very good chiropractor that we work with, a couple of them actually, and it can really help. This horse, once again, I think, normally in old days before I would have had a good chiropractor, I would have just gone back to stretching him until they were sound again. But I really feel like a good chiropractor, once again, I keep in that quote, good chiropractor, because there are plenty of them out there just like shoers who do more damage than good. Nice lengthening across the diagonal. See how nicely he lengthened? It just came right back. He didn't hollow. That's what I'm looking for. And look at the slow rhythm. This is probably the best rhythm this horse has ever had right here. He's just literally clicking along just like a metronome. That's what we all want them to do. Once again, that shows you the horse is relaxing. Tense horses are never rhythmic. They're always slow, fast, slow, fast, slow, fast. Like the bad rider you see going around around a jumping course, that pulls the horses back, and it looks like they're going fast, but they always lose because they're actually pulling the horse back all the time and then charging forward, where the person who looks like they're going the slowest in the perfect rhythm is usually the one who wins the speed. Beautiful stretching, and once again, look how he's able to stretch all the way down without breaking at the third or fourth vertebrae in the neck. And once again, how completely relaxed he is, and look how floppy his ears are. And yes, he's had a couple of little moments where his brain said, oh, I need to do this, but notice he completely gave it up. It didn't take, a year or so ago, that would have been, 15 minutes of circling, getting back to it. But he's just simply learned it just isn't worth it any longer. And why? Because he feels good. Once again, if he didn't feel good and he weren't sound, he wouldn't relax. Period. That's all you have to know with this horse. If he's uptight, there's something going wrong. Nice shoulder in there, just a little bit of shoulder forward, that's all I'm asking for. But he's able to stay up in that quite nicely. Once again, come right back to the stretch without any change of rhythm whatsoever. Exactly what we're looking for. And once again, look how nice that looks behind the saddle there. We can see that it won't be too long before we'll have that flattened out. That is the hole behind the saddle. So we still have some strengthening to do, but I feel like he's really on track now. Once again, this is the hard part. Everything else is easy. He was actually a really fun ride on this particular day, more so than he's ever been, because he just, normally you would have to just be so on guard working this horse, but this was exactly how I want him to go. Just perfectly relaxed. Look how easily he bends and makes those turns. And once again, look how easy it is to bend a horse that's over its back. It's effortless. They will bend to the degree that they can bend. You never have to force a horse to bend that can. That is, its back is up so that it can bend to the level of its physical development. So once again, that doesn't mean just because they're over their back, they're going to be able to bend around a 5-meter circle. Once again, most horses, and especially like with this one, he's just now being able to bend around a 20-meter circle. Also, why horses like him and Legolas, they're hard in dressage rings. Everybody's used to not a lot of people ride horses this big, and once again, it's a small space. So, this kind of horse, Legolas, we literally had to work on 30 or 40-meter circles for probably the first year of his work. Most of the time, he was just too big to go in a dressage ring. He didn't fit in it. He literally could not make a 20-meter circle and be comfortable. But now he can. That's what we're looking for, and so can this one. You see how lovely he's just staying in that stretch right there. As I said, look how floppy ears he is, but look how the tail is being held out from the body. Look how deep the step is right there. That is picture perfect right there. So that's what we have to build on. So every time I come up, I try not to lose that. If I lose that, I have to go back down. Once again, whatever the frame is in the head and neck is just a symptom of what's happening underneath you and behind you. So that's why we must focus on the back end. The front end comes up and becomes light all by itself when we focus on the back end. Once again, run into a really nice shoulder in that time off the left leg. So that time I didn't have to flex him a little over more than I wanted to. still has a little tendency, you can see there, to bend the neck a little more on this side. But I come right back into the stretch again, letting him all the way down. Beautiful working trot there. All the way down and through that corner without changing. I remember, and his owner will remember this, it took me about 2 years before I could actually do a figure 8 on this horse and keep him like you see him now. I remember the day I was able to do it the first time. Because every time you tried to change the rein, you could kind of hold him there on, on the bend on the circle, but as soon as you came off of it, everything would just go to hell and he'd go straight up in the air and you'd have to go through the whole process all over again. But do remember that we always have to educate both sides of the horse's brain. They're interesting characters and that they have right and left brains. So the right eye goes to the left brain, the left eye goes to the right brain, but they don't have a crossover in the brain the way we have. So that's why we literally have to school horses in both directions, or why horses can be very spooky in one direction and not in the other. But look how beautifully he's just rolling over the ground. Looks like a big ball, and you can actually see him becoming light now. Once again, the head and neck has nothing to do with whether a horse is light or not. It has to do with whether they're working over their back. So this idea that people have when they pull the neck up into these awkward positions for the horse, once again, not every horse can have the same neck position. Most of these thoroughbred type horses like this one is never going to have a high head on set neck because his neck isn't built that way. These thoroughbred horses and a lot of the warm bloods from years past, especially mares, even have necks that come more straight out of the body generally of every breed. So once again, we can't fit every peg, every round peg into a square hole, and that's what kind of happens when people try to make the head and neck look like something that they think in their mind is what dressage looks like. You see there, I'm able to bring him up nicely there into the working trot again. No change of the trot. Remember, that's the goal. As I bring him up, I just want to keep that exact same trot, so nothing changes. If it changes behind, it isn't any good. So that time I was able to bring him up into that phase and then let him right back down again. So once again, getting this connection is the hardest thing that we work for with every horse that we ever train. But look how beautifully you can literally see him coming across there, lifting his body up from behind and flexing his hocks. Once again, that ultimately turns into collection. But once again, collection is never something a horse can sustain for a long period of time, and it is dependent upon muscular development. If you don't have the muscular development, a horse cannot collect, contrary to popular belief. This is Will Faerber from Art to Ride. Hope you've enjoyed this. See you next time. Will Faerber and Bailador.